believe you studied piano as a child. At what stage did the guitar become more of an interest for you?
I was about 10 when I figured out that you could carry a guitar, but you couldn't carry a piano. So I started playing the guitar then, 10 or 11.
Simple as that.
Yeah, well, you know, it's the great luxury of being born with a gift, I think, is that things having to do with it are pretty simple.
Yeah. And I think it was classical piano you studied?
I studied that when I was a kid, yeah, really young.
You still tinker away at the classics sometimes for your own enjoyment?
Just to keep my hands in shape, yeah.
Yeah. And you began songwriting while you're still at school. Who were some of the songwriters that were really inspiring you at that young age?
Ooh, I guess everybody who wrote for Billie Holiday. Bob Dylan, Cole Porter, Johnny Mercer.
And were you getting a lot of encouragement from people around you to pursue songwriting?
Well, not so much the songwriting. I don't think anybody expected me to be a songwriter. More the performing end. I mean, it was never discouraged. You know, I didn't have stage parents. They weren't real thrilled at my choice of a career for a long time. But as my mom said, there wasn't anything they could do about it.
Yeah. There's quite a bit of controversy at the time surrounding your debut single, Society's Child. I think you were only about 15 at the time?
I was 14 when I wrote it and 15 when it became a hit. Well, it was about a black boy and a white girl, and people just didn't really talk about that here. So when it became a hit, it created quite a stir, and there was a pretty violent reaction. I mean, there were radio stations burned for playing it, and people were fired, and it's pretty amazing. Looking back on it now, how do you think personally you coped with all the attention that it received at the time? Well, I think I did what any adolescent does. I went away. I mean, I didn't pay any attention to it. I tried to be cool. Your initial contract, you had a contract with Elektra at one stage as a songwriter only, wasn't it? I had a contract with Elektra for a heartbeat as a performer and songwriter. And then on the same day, there was a guy named Harold Leventhal who was managing Judy Collins and a bunch of other people, and he told me I'd never be a good singer, I should become a songwriter, and Elektra told me I'd never be a good songwriter, I should become a singer, so they both said the opposite thing. You think perhaps your early career you probably were a victim of maybe too much notoriety too soon? No, I don't think so. If I was held captive by anything, it was the Times, just because no one knew then about bodyguards or about taking precautions when you were getting threats or anything like that. So there was a lot of stuff that I'd prefer not to have been exposed to, but it wasn't the too much too soon, the classic Hollywood. I mean, I think most of that classic Hollywood stuff is just garbage. Yeah. I read where you said you felt a bit shunned by the folk fraternity after that early success. Well, they were real irritated with me. I mean, I'd use drums on the record, and then I'd have the nerve to have a hit with it, so they were not happy with me. But as you mentioned before, you did turn away from music for a period in the late 60s and early 70s. I read somewhere you gave away all your earnings, is that right? I gave away a lot. I didn't give away all of it. I had an unfortunate business manager who ended up taking most of it. And what prompted that decision for you to do that? To do what? To give away a lot of your earnings. Oh, it just seemed like I had way more than I needed. I had friends who needed it more. It was again, pretty basic. Yeah. You had a taste of major worldwide commercial success there in the mid-70s. How do you look back on that period now? Well, it was a good time. I had a good time. I think I was real lucky that I had a variety of hits. I mean, 17 was a huge hit here. Fly Too High was a huge hit in Australia. Love Is Blind was a big hit in Japan. So I kind of got the benefit of having a very varied career and not really being pigeonholed, because I could always go to another country where I was expected to be something else. Sure. I believe it took 4 months for you to write 17, is that right? Yes, 3 months. 3 months. A long time. Is that usual for you to labour over a song for that long? Depends on the song. 17 was a hard song because I knew that it was going to be an important song for me, so I didn't want to blow it, and when you're concerned with that and you're sort of striking new ground for yourself as a writer, you have to be real careful not to rush it.
This evening with Ian.
You've had so many of your songs covered by other artists over the years as well. Is there any one cover that holds a particularly special place for you?
Ooh, probably Bette Midler doing Some People's Lives, John Mellencamp doing All Roads to the River, just because they were totally unexpected and they really breathed new life into my life. Bette's recording kind of told the world that I was still a writer to be reckoned with, and John's recording blew the lid off anybody thinking that I could only write for women.
Yeah, comment too, yeah. If you had to pin it down to one thing, what would you class as your best quality as a songwriter?
Patience. I don't have any in the rest of my life, but I do have it as a writer most of the time.
Yeah.
It's hard to be patient, you know? It's hard as a writer to be patient because you want to move on to the next thing. Sometimes you have to slow the wheel down.
Are you extra critical of your own work, perhaps?
Probably. I mean, you never look down at the people who are below you as writers. You always look to the people above you and judge yourself by that.
How would you say you've changed as a writer over the years? The method that you go about it? And
I don't think the method's changed that much. I trust my talent more. I trust it to be there when I need it. That's a great luxury as a writer. It's one of the luxuries of being somebody who's been a writer for a long time. I waste less time. You know, if I have something to say, I don't usually need as much time to say it as I used to. I'm more picky.
More picky.
Yeah, choosier.
When do you find the best time to sit down and write?
Oh, anytime. Writers write. That's the job description. You know, when it comes, and you grab it.
You can write on the road?
I can't finish stuff on the road. I've never been good at that. I've only finished 1 or 2 songs in my life on the road, but I can start things and then finish them later.
Now, you made the move to Nashville in the late 80s. How important a move was that for you in terms of your career?
I don't know about in terms of my career. It was really important as a writer. Nashville is the last holdout in this country of songwriters. It's really a place where you get a reputation as a good writer. You don't get a reputation as a famous writer or a successful writer or a wealthy writer. So in that respect, it's very important to the community at large because it is one of the few places where you can be treated as a writer full time, even if you're pumping gas. I mean, everybody knows somebody in Nashville who's got a day job who turned around and had a hit record. My plumber and my cleaning lady are 2 examples.
Really?
Yeah, it's great that way.
Now, something you've also dabbled in is writing for films and television, and even in advertising circles as well. Is that more difficult or easy to do, writing for a client, I guess you could call it?
I don't know if it's more difficult. It's more fun sometimes because if someone like Brian De Palma approaches you, say, and asks for a song, they usually have a very specific list of what they want, starting with the kind of general feel and the rhythm, and moving on to what they want the song to describe. So that's a real challenge, and I tend to like challenges. Commercials are different. I haven't worked in them in a while. That gets tedious because you've always got a panel of 12 or 15 people sitting in the studio telling you their thoughts as you're working. And that gets hard. I write a lot of articles. I write for 2 or 3 different magazines, and that's a good thing to do too. I enjoy that a lot.
Now you're with Windham Hill label at the moment.
That's right.
How did that come about?
They called, which was really a once-in-a-lifetime thing for me. Usually people are busy turning me down, and I've got to go scrambling to find somebody who'll have some faith in me. But Windham Hill called us and asked whether we were interested in signing, and I said, sure. So that was a luxury.
That was an easy decision to make because the type of music they normally represent is probably a bit removed from your own.
Yeah, I really was clear that I didn't want to be doing zither music for them, as I call it. And they were real clear that was not what they expected from me, that they wanted to release singles like a regular record company and start moving into that area. So it's worked out very well for both of us. We've got a single now on the AC charts, which is great for me. So I haven't had one here since, I think my last single on the charts here was in 80. So that's worked out great, and they seem to be very pleased. And they've given me a free hand. I mean, there's not much more an artist can ask from a label than to be given a free hand.
And it's getting a lot rarer these days too, I guess.
Yeah, as money tightens up, absolutely.
I read where you mentioned you named your album Hunger, because hunger is something that has really kept you going over the years. Do you do anything special to maintain that hunger?
Watch my back, listen to younger writers, try and know what's going on, and just pay attention. And I guess being hard on your own work is part of it too. I mean, there's very little room for complacency when you're an artist. You can't afford it.
Yeah.
I guard against bitterness. I try to guard against bitterness. I just try to be a good writer, really.
Some of the young writers that have caught your attention in recent times?
I think Ani DeFranco's doing some great stuff.
She's wonderful, isn't she?
There's a fellow named David Gray out of Ireland that I think is very good. There's some real good writers out there right now.
Talk about your live shows these days. How are they based? Is it primarily solo or with a backup?
No, I've been out solo now for almost 2 years and really enjoying it. It's made me a much more ferocious guitarist because I've had nobody to fall back on. There's something about getting on stage solo, but with the intention not to do a folk show, that forces you to stretch your own boundaries. It's not to harp on age, but I've been doing this now since I was 12, so to do the same thing day after day is really soul-destroying. The solo shows are one way of keeping it real fresh.
How have you found audiences have changed over the years?
Shorter attention span. The more TV commercials there are, the more you can pretty much clock them that they're going to last. Well, nowadays they last for about 12 minutes or so before you have to really do something to get their interest up again.
I guess touring in this vein, in the solo vein now, has probably brought back some appeal to touring to you?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's made it, it's made it real fresh. It's made it something that's, when you've got a band, there's something to fall back on. And it's rare that you see a band like the Police, say, or U2, where every show they put everything into it. So for me, touring solo really precludes any of that happening. It also lets me do stuff like try out new songs. It's harder to do that with a band, because the band have to learn them. And by the time the band have learned them, they're not as new to you anymore.
Sure.
But with a solo show, I can literally finish a song that afternoon and sing it that night.
Any chance of an Australian visit? It's been a fair while since we've seen you down here.
Well, I think I have to get an Australian record company first.
That would help, wouldn't it?
Economically, I understand the situation there is being heavily affected by the situation in Asia. Or in Southeast Asia, I guess I should say. So, strings are pretty tight right now. I don't know, I love Australia. In fact, my favorite co-writer and sound man is a New Zealander who's lived in Australia for years, so we'd both like to come down for a while. It'd be great.
Yeah, look, we'd love to see you.
Thanks.
Now, I believe there's been some talk of an autobiography. Is that underway yet, or still in the planning stage?
Yeah, I'm starting to write on that. Beginning. That's a massive undertaking. That's really. I've been getting offers for an autobiography since I was 16, so I tend to discount them, but I think I've started working on it. So, oh hell.
How are you finding it so far?
Do you know what? I've got to put you on hold. I've got a bird that just flew into my house and knocked itself out. Can you hold on for a second?
Sure.
Ooh, gosh. I suppose I regret having trusted a couple of people as much as I did and not listening to my instincts when they told me it was time to leave. That's about the only thing.
Is that all?
Well, I have your average regrets. I regret not having been nicer to my mom before she died, and I regret this, that, and the other, but as an artist, no, I'm happy with what I've done. I mean, I made the choices I needed to make for the kind of work that I wanted to do, and I never expected to have massive success on a global level that would last. So things work out pretty well.
And then
I lead a pretty good life, you know, really. I have enough food and enough shelter and enough time to write, and I don't have to get a day job. So for a writer, you can't ask much more than that.
No, you can't. Any real regrets you can't go back and change anyway, so why worry?
No point in dwelling on them.
That's right.
But that's what I meant when I said you have to guard against bitterness. I mean, I think as a writer that bitterness really kills your work, so you have to be careful with your regrets even, to recognize them and to look at them in the eye and to say, well, I regret it, but it led me where I am now, so I really can't moan about it for too long.
If a young singer-songwriter in the same position as, say, you were 30 years ago come to you for some advice and you just had a couple of minutes to spend with them, what would be some of the things you'd make sure you told them?
Be brave. Be fierce. Don't listen to anyone beyond the first step, because I think if you listen to people, that's a good thing. But if you listen to people who are at odds with your instincts, then you get crushed and you crush your instincts, and that's really all an artist has to go on is their instinct. Keep banging on doors till they fall down.
Sounds like sound advice.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it worked for you.
Well, so far, we don't know. Life is long, you know.
Okay, Janis, look, I won't hold you up any longer. I'll let you go and check on the status of that bird. I hope it's okay.
Oh, man. Well, thanks. Thanks for the interview. Say hello to Melbourne for me.
Sure will.
Skies right now?
It's just after midnight, so...
No, you've got no skies.
We've got a starry sky.
Well,
okay.
Enjoy it. You live in a beautiful place.
Thanks very much. You take care, and hopefully we'll get to see you down here sometime in the near future. We'll be waiting for you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Janis.
Bye-bye.
All the best.